To a stranger, the tundra seemed stark and bare, but for the people who lived there, it was full of life. All except for one man who lived alone. He was always angry, and people warned their children to avoid him. He lived in a cabin close to the bay. Families would come to the bay, and he would watch them as they laughed and played together. The longing he felt would turn to resentment, and he was relieved when they left. One night he was startled awake by unfamiliar sounds. He slowly moved from his bed and made his way to the beach. The moon was full, and he crouched behind a boulder. He saw beautiful women singing and dancing on the beach. They were naked, and their bodies gleamed in the light of the moon. He scanned the scene, and he saw there were small piles of fur that lay around the circle. He reached out and pulled one into his arms. The motion startled the women, and they grabbed their furs, wrapping them around their bodies as they rushed to the water. Unbelievably, the man saw the women were turning into seals as they dived into the surf, all except one who was frantically looking around. The other seal women called to her, but she could not return to them without her sealskin. The man emerged from behind the boulder, grabbing Seal Woman and dragging her back to his cabin. Seal Woman bore him children with dark, shiny hair. Though she loved her children, she felt empty and sad. As for the man, his loneliness turned to rage. He had provided for her, yet she rarely smiled, except when she held her children close. They were the only things that gave her comfort. The man became filled with bitterness, and when he left to hunt, Seal Woman and her children would go to the beach. The children would play in the surf, and there was fine webbing between their fingers. As for the woman, she would sit near the other seals, who basked in the sun with their pups. After one visit, Seal Woman returned to the cabin and began to cry in a deep, mournful voice. Her grief frightened her children. They hugged her and sang to her, and she fought to stop crying and smiled through her tears. Her children were relieved and began to dance. Seal Woman laughed, and they danced harder until one crashed into the wall, knocking loose a high shelf that held a forbidden box. The box crashed to the floor, and the wood broke open, and a shiny fur fell out. Seal Woman hugged it to her body, breathing in the familiar scent, and was filled with joy. Seal Woman went to the bay, wrapping the fur around her body as her children followed. As they reached the water, the seals called to her. With a look of longing toward her children, she dived into the water and was transformed into a seal. Her children were filled with awe to see their mother swim and play in the waves. They had only seen her in despair, but now saw who she truly was. Though her children longed for their mother, they visited her often at the rock, and through her life, they knew that no matter what happens, it is never too late to begin again. The adaptation of this Nordic story is woven with many threads of grief. Which character in the story carried the most grief, and why? What does untended grief do to the one who carries it? Does untended grief affect others? How so? When an individual carries grief, no matter how much they try to repress it, it impacts her and others. Hurt people, even unintentionally. On the other hand, when individuals do their grief work, it can help in the healing of others. The Japanese practice of kintsugi, where broken pottery are repaired by gold, teaches us that even our brokenness, when healed, can result in beautiful scars that can give us new value and purpose. If you have done or are doing your grief work, what have you gained?